Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of HomeKit Insider. You've got me, your host as always, Andrew O'Hara. Joining me once again this week is Wes Hilliard, who I believe called next in the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight. So I'm pulling for you on that one.
That whole thing, I didn't even know was happening until like yesterday when I saw someone
Really?
a news post saying that Mike Tyson slapped him at weigh-in. I'm just like, oh, this is a thing that's happening. Yeah.
They have been, because Mike Tyson, okay, first off, I don't follow any of this stuff, but I follow TV news, and it's a big deal that this is the first fight that's going to be broadcast live through Netflix, which has, with no additional charge, so it's gonna hit record numbers and stuff like that. So, like, I was following from that perspective. I also really hate the Paul brothers. They happen to be from Cleveland, and I'm like, man, what a stain on the city that is.
I do know
and we
that
have got plenty of stains.
Yeah, I do know that this person is a terrible character, and I know to dislike him. And Mike Tyson's going to wipe the floor with him. But as far as
I think that's why most people are watching, right? They just want to see him laid out.
Yeah, it's really funny how stupid. Like it's kind of like I just read about what he did, about like jumping up at him and getting his face slapped. Yeah, it's just like what you want to do to every like petulant child that acts that way, because it's what this person seems to be acting like. Is just some crazy spoiled brat. So yeah, fun right. Wrestling stuff going on. Or I know guess what, UFC anyway.
Okay, I guess outside of wrestling or fighting, boxing, whatever this is, our normal topics here on the show. It's been a big week for Apple in general. We had more beta stuff dropping. We had new Macs coming out this week. We had a new version of Final Cut, which I am completely hyped for. I've been doing a couple of short forms on it, if you guys follow the YouTube channel, so I'm very excited about that. I did even test, Wes, the new AI capabilities for the magnetic mask and how it compares on the M3 Max versus the M4 Max. And unsurprisingly, it was definitely better, but only about 10%. It actually still, that's probably the first thing I found in a video workload that put some strain on my machine. Video workloads are no longer that intensive for Apple's processors, but it still took about 15 minutes. I think it was 15 versus 13 or something like that for the two machines to go through the entire timeline and apply the magnetic mask all the way through. So it definitely takes some time.
It's getting tough to talk about some of these Apple product processors in a way, because before it was, M1, M2 especially, it was all about the processor, the CPUs, how fast the single core performance was, and
especially transitioning from Intel in general and GPUs and everything. Yeah.
And then since the first couple of generations, we keep getting all of these extra components. We're getting these hardware accelerated units that change video production, that change everything about how the product works, GPU accelerators and all this stuff. And while I'm sure tools like Geekbench can test for these, they have to be optimized for them. And the only way to do it is by doing the video workflow and running it and testing it. And it's still incredible how much speed these things have. Like, you compare this $599 M4 Mac Mini to the $7,000 configured Mac, or $32,000 configured Mac Pro from Intel days, and it just wipes the floor in every way, even with the Afterburner card. It's incredible how much performance has come from these chips. My M4 Mac Mini arrives, I think, Monday or Tuesday this week, so I'm excited to set that up.
Nice, yeah. I mean, the Mac Mini really has been incredible. I've loved that thing. Even if I don't really use desktops much anymore, I'm just so impressed by it. But I'm also impressed with that M4 Max. The fact that Apple is fitting that GPU power and everything into a laptop that is besting the 3080 Super is insane. And on a CPU level, it's besting the M2 Ultra that's in the Mac Pro. And of course, you're not buying a Mac Pro just for the CPU and everything. It's the expandability and customization, but still, that was never the case before. You would never buy an Apple Intel laptop that was getting better performance than a Mac Pro that had been released 1 or 2 years earlier. It was never a thing.
It makes you wonder what Apple's going to do when the M4 Ultra arrives. And are they just going to come out with the same case again with the same expansion slots that do almost nothing really? They very good for very specific workflows, but people are looking for more of that GPU side of things again, and I don't know. We'll see. We've talked about
Well,
it before. This is interesting. I mean, this M4 Pro can outdo the M2 Ultra Mac Pro right now in some performance tests. Again, just incredible strides in Apple Silicon, and I'm glad that they can continue to release these things because we were just not seeing that back in the Intel days.
No, but I mean, like that 3080 Super is like it's like a foot long. Like it's a massive graphics card for a desktop, and it's comparable to this tiny laptop you can slip in your bag.
Right.
And the same thing goes like when we're looking at the M4 Ultra, which again it'll be a desktop computer for either the Studio or the Pro, both. But that is going to be comparable to that 3090, which is just insane to me. Apple's done so much here. It is wild, but we don't got to talk about all this stuff. If you guys want to learn more about all of Apple's latest machines, I'm sure you can hear plenty about them over on the Apple Insider podcast. So let's get into some news for the week, starting off with just a quick little one. I don't know if you've seen this app at all, but it's a new podcasting app. Since we're a podcast, we can talk about those. And this one had such a nice UI that I just wanted to give it a shout out. It's called Q, like Queue, and it is so beautiful. It's just a very simple designed podcast app, free to download, so you can try it out with in-app purchase to unlock everything. But it just looks great. It looks really, really nice. And honestly, I was sold on this just for like these little animations and UI elements that they did. So if you're in the market for a podcast app, you want to try it out, there's a link in the show notes for this one because I think it looks really, really pretty. I don't know if there's where's the developer on this one? Ike Drescher is who we're going to thank for that one, the developer of this app, because they've done an absolutely amazing job on it.
Yeah, this looks really cool. I always like seeing new entries in the space, and I'd like to let you know that I just started recording. So 7 minutes, yay. It's okay. Thank goodness for backup audio recordings. But
from here on out, Wes will sound better.
Yes, that was that's always interesting when that happens. But you know, life. We've
lost 90% of our listeners in the first 7 minutes because Wes's audio was subpar. I'm kidding. We're fine.
It's never that bad. I think our recording suite does fine. It's just definitely more compressed than now. Maybe you'll hear a difference. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, I like it when new apps come out and compete, and always new interfaces, nice and fresh. It's interesting to see what they do.
Well, next up in the list of news, we have the Nuki Smart Lock Ultra. Nuki is I believe they're more European based, so they usually launch in the EU before they come here stateside. But I've always really liked them. They've always had a really nice, clean, kind of modern design. A little bit of an issue that we have with like the August locks that Wes and I have talked about at length, where people aren't quite sure what to do with it, and you're like, it's just a deadbolt. It's just round, but it's a deadbolt. So you turn it like a deadbolt, but you're walking out the door. You don't need to touch the deadbolt because you're in someone's house. You can just use the doorknob because the doorknob's the same.
Right.
But that's the vibes I still get from Nuki because it is a retrofit lock that goes over or replaces your regular interior deadbolt. Nice and compact, and this new one is 3 times smaller and 3 times faster than the prior generation. It is technically their 5th generation smart lock, and the EU version replaces the cylinder and includes 3 different keys, so you cannot keep your exact same keys, but the US version that'll be coming in 2025 will be fully retrofit, allowing you to keep your cylinder, no need to rekey, which makes it especially good for renters. They say there's no support for HomeKit or for HomeKey here, but they do plan to add Aliro support, which is basically HomeKey but for Matter. So we should see the exact same thing here. I'm curious if they'll have the auto unlock with Aliro, but we're waiting for Aliro to even get here, let alone what features of it companies will support. But I expect they'll have a version of HomeKey via Aliro. I don't know about the auto unlock yet, but something like that'll be coming like next year. The biggest change here they did to this was they removed the giant bulky battery compartment that hung below it. It now has a new internal battery. It It supports Wi-Fi with built-in Matter over Thread, and they say this is the first smart lock to have a brushless motor. If anyone is familiar with power tools, you might be familiar with why a brushless motor is a good thing, but the highlights, they're much more efficient, or at least somewhat more efficient, about 10% more power efficient than a regular brush motor. They are quieter. So you have quieter to operate, which I have heard from people who have tried this. It's insanely quiet. It's very fast. They have a longer lifespan because there's no brushes making contact. It has a longer lifespan for the motor itself, and in general, smaller and lighter, which is why this one is so much tinier than before. What do you think of this new lock?
It's cool. I mean, I always wonder how many more versions of a smart lock can we get. It seems like there's constantly more designs coming along. But I do think this one might be a little easier for people to understand, to grab a hold of, to turn and unlock. But no, overall, cool idea. I maybe bummed out a little bit on the home key support, but maybe that could be backpedaled in through, like you said, like a Lero and everything. Just so many smart locks to choose from these days. It is funny to me, though. I'm looking at this one. How much is it supposed to cost?
I don't know what it is. Do they have a price here for the US?
We have a euro, 349, and that is incredible. Because the level lock we're going to get into is about $400 US, and it is this little tiny just deadbolt. It looks like a deadbolt. It functions like a deadbolt. People see it. It makes sense, and then you look at this guy and it's a very large lock, and I wonder if we're at this weird place where it's getting difficult to manufacture that, and that's why it's so expensive. Maybe they were trying to aim a little bit more down market, or they had a specific design goal in mind. But I imagine that the ultimate goal of these smart locks is to reach level lock design. I mean, why wouldn't you want to just look like a regular deadbolt, just for security purposes and for aesthetics as well? Because this is a large hunk of thing hanging off of your door, and it kind of looks like a doorknob. And I think some people would look at the door and be like, why is there two doorknobs? So it's interesting to say the least, but I wonder if maybe they're a little bit behind the times compared to competitors.
Well, I think the reason is two or three different things here. First is the actual, like something like the brushless motor. Those are not as cheap as your traditional motors, which makes it faster and quieter. That's what we do see with this thing. And that I think that is going to be a big deal. It could also impact lifespan of it. If these things last longer, it's built to last. You don't have to buy another one in as short of a time span as you may have to buy a competitor. Never had a competitor crap out on me, so I don't know, lifespan of a lot of these door locks. We are in this position where we test a lot of them, so it's like constantly swapping them out.
I've had two August locks completely seize up on me somehow. So these types of, maybe the brushless motor would definitely be better for that kind of situation. Yeah, I mean, I could see why this particular industrial design makes sense, and it's probably more efficient, right? But level lock probably has to make a lot of compromises. Doesn't have as large of a battery compartment because they hide it in the deadbolt. So it's definitely a give and take, but I don't know.
Well, I think the two other things that we see here with this is, one, they're really touting the speed. They say it is 3 times faster than their prior one, and their prior one wasn't slow. So from the people who have tested this, they say it unlocks fully in like a second or something, which is much quicker than I think any other one that I have tested. And it's one of those things where you look at your diminishing returns, at what you're going to spend on to getting to that point for that little bit of better. So it may have cost them a significant amount of R&D or changes in hardware to get to that super fast unlock speed. And it's going to end up adding on to that price tag by a little bit. They could have slowed that down and been $50 cheaper, but they're trying to be that best of the best point. And the third thing is they are really focusing on the future proofing it. Like they're saying, oh, we're going to have a Lero in here. I've seen very, very few promising to bring a Lero to a lock yet. And as you said, we're getting into level here in a moment. But they have HomeKey, but I know Matter requirements I think are a little bit more onerous. Like they're a little bit higher threshold
Right.
for some of these requirements. So they're probably building in some of those future proof things that Level and others didn't do. The final thing that we're moving on
Mm.
is that there is a difference in the styles of the lock. So because you said like this one goes on the back and it's outside of the door, maybe has a bigger battery and stuff. But when you look at like the level one had to replace your front deadbolt
Right.
too, like your keyhole. So all of that has additional components inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has a little bit more space for all this stuff. It's got those extra components in there. This is all having to fit outside of your lock to make it retrofit. They
Right.
may not be able to do that because Level's other products aren't getting the updates that we're going to talk about here that don't have to replace those pieces of hardware. So I think all those come into play. Like they're able to give all
It's
those things
different.
in a fully retrofit solution.
Different buying solutions, different ideas. I mean, I'm looking at the price too, and I get the feature set. I get that it's quieter. I get that it's faster. But then again, I look at the Aqara U50 that I bought on sale for my mother for $90, and it does everything she needs it to do, and it's a secure system. It uses HomeKey, so it's encrypted and safe. Like I don't expect it to get hacked or anything. I'm not worried about security. I don't think someone's gonna break into it unless they, again, someone wants to break into a house, they're going to. These are just, they're deterrents in any case. It doesn't matter which smart lock you buy. If you want to break a door, you're going to break a door. But so I'm wondering personally, if I'm shopping in the market today, why would I choose a $350+ smart lock versus something like the Aqara U50? Other than just aesthetic, like for me, I want the level
It's
lock.
aesthetics.
I want the level lock. I want it to look pretty. I want it to look like a deadbolt. So I'm definitely going to go that route. But otherwise, just if you just need pure performance, it's curious just to see again what these competitors are targeting, and I wonder what consumers are thinking about when they're buying.
Absolutely. And again, part of this is Nuki is hitting a lot of that European market, which a lot of
Mm-hmm.
our locks don't go over there. So
Right.
that could be a big part of it as well. Okay, well, we do want to talk about, we were going to talk about a car. We're going to talk about Level Lock. But before we do, let's take our break because we chatted for that for quite a while. We're going to thank him. We love him. It is Shopify. And I have learned so many things as we've been covering Shopify as a sponsor on the podcast. But I also know a lot of people who have been like Shopify developers and working on like web stores with it. And there's so many cool things. I was looking at someone who had just implemented Shopify on their web front, and they were talking about how huge the increase has been for their cart totals by having these little add-on options. So like they'll have like a product listed, and they're like, oh, these are also the compatible ones that can go with it, and people can just like check mark them and quickly add them to their box. And it's such an easy little thing. I'm like, I love that. Like that is such a cool little thing to be able to toggle on and instantly create additional value on your products. It's one of those little things that I love about Shopify. Probably the biggest thing though is how it scales from tiny little people starting their first businesses to people who have these massive companies, Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklyn, and we've talked about all of them. Moment Nomad here in the tech space. Those are two of the big ones that I know that use Shopify. Lots of people have been turning to this platform. It has so much functionality built in. Create, coupon codes and discounts and credits. Create this unified inventory system that'll match a brick and mortar store with your online marketplace. Sync that inventory as well as people do things like in-store pickup and like shipping out orders. Like it's so cool to be able to handle all of that with this one platform. It's just such a nice unified experience. There's so much stuff to love about it. A couple things that they like that we point out. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, the number one checkout on the planet. The not so secret that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. Speaking of Shop Pay, I love that checkout process because you got Shop Pay, you've got Apple Pay, you've got Samsung Pay, Google Wallet, like PayPal, put in your credit card information, whatever you want, and it's trusted, feels secure, people recognize it. They know they can trust your store. There's so many things to love about Shopify. So upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Rothy's, Allbirds, Brooklyn, and Moment Nomad, all these companies use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/homekit, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/homekit to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/homekit. So,
Yeah.
as we talked about, let's get into Level Lock. Why don't you walk us through this?
Well, Level Lock got an update, quietly almost. It's kind of snuck by me. I saw in the release notes that Level Lock got support for Matter over Thread suddenly, so that's cool. I did see a note. I wonder if you can explain this. It's a like a limited time upgrade for Matter over
That
Thread
is
or
a
something.
little bit of a weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So
what's
basically,
going on?
so there's two different ways you can go. First, you can buy it right now with Matter installed, buy it, put it on, good to go. Second option is if you've already purchased one, or if you purchase one right now through Amazon, the link in the show note one, whatever, you can get it now without that firmware update, and then it'll be a free upgrade for anyone who already has one. So if you already have one, free upgrade until that date, which is January 14th of 2025. To me, it is weird that they are like putting this behind a free update for a limited time before, I assume, charging people for the update or just charging people for a new
A
lock.
new lock.
I'm not quite sure,
It's got to
but
be a
it is a
server
little
thing.
bit weird.
It's like a server. It's got to be a server controlling these updates, and maybe it's just volume, or they don't want to have to pay for it perpetually. They just want to have it available because whatever they're doing, they must be storing the software required for this somewhere and fetching it. That's my only guess. And I know maybe that sounds weird because they update locks all the time. Yeah, but maybe the package for this is bigger. Maybe it just requires more bandwidth. Who knows? But there seems to be a financial component to this that we're not aware of, and them allowing it to be a retro update is them just trying to be good to the customer because honestly they didn't have to do this, so at least they're doing it at all. Whether or not it's on a timeline, sure, but that's plenty of time. January 14th is a while away, so
Agreed. So this is going to keep all the same functionality it has now, but it'll add Matter support. So it's going to make it instantly available across all the other different smart home platforms. You know, Smart Things, Google Home, Amazon, all of that very easily. All of that's great news to hear. I'm absolutely upgrading mine because for HomeKit users, one of the things that we heard a lot early on with Matter, like, oh, why would I upgrade it to Matter because it's working perfect with HomeKit? Number one reason why, you're getting Thread. So right now it operates over Bluetooth. The Thread radios, we talked about them, that they've been hidden in these locks. Literally the Bolt, the other versions of Level have the Thread radios in them, and they have never used them. Then they came out with that little update to them where it made them usable for the apartment complexes to like sync things together or something, for like that shared living space
right.
situation, but never for us. And I always kept wondering, why aren't they just going to turn on Thread for HomeKit or Apple Home without worrying about Matter? But I've always heard like package deal, make it easier to understand. It's like, oh, now it works with Thread, now it works, and now it's just one thing. You update, you get Matter, and you get Thread. That's going to improve, I'm hoping, battery life because Thread is more battery efficient than Bluetooth is, and range could be better because you can have something like an Eve Energy, by your front door, and that's going to allow you to act as a Thread router, not a border router, but a router, and pass that along and give you extended range. So you could get more responsiveness out of this as well.
Yeah, you got to think it's a more modern standard. And while Apple hasn't deprecated HomeKit or anything, it's not like they're the fastest to adopt features or compatibility sets or different things. And and again, we're talking about a smart lock, so it open and closes, right? But it just gives you more options and more ability. So I've recently moved router systems to one by TP-Link, and it's been interesting because I'm coming from a Linksys system that didn't really have a lot of control in the app. It just was giving me a lot of problems, and I was on Wi-Fi 6, so maybe it would have opened more control if I moved to Wi-Fi 7. I don't know what would have been solved had I done that, but I'm trying out a Wi-Fi system by TP-Link, and in the app, it has the option to add Matter HomeKit or Matter devices to the router's app as a and use the router as a controller for them. I didn't because I'm using HomeKit, but it is interesting to see that is an option and then just an additional layer. I mean, you can share these across multiple ecosystems, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can use different automations. It's like having the Aqara app have specific automations to Aqara features, but still being able to see these devices in the Home app. Having these layers of availability and control is very useful, and I wouldn't bypass Matter just because it isn't HomeKit, because honestly, at this point, I believe Matter is more future proof, and I don't think HomeKit's going anywhere. I just think it's going to look more and more like Matter as time goes along, and there's a chance that it'll be kind of like Qi 2, where it's just MagSafe, right? Where they end up being more in parallel, and maybe as time goes forward, Matter will be more important to Apple's ecosystem than it is today. So there's nothing to lose by updating. Is all I'm saying.
I agree. I think people were just scared originally because like there was a lot of early bugs with Matter. There still is, and depending on what version of Matter this is supporting, could throw up some bugs. But I think that the efficiency, the range, and all these other benefits of Thread will outweigh that. I mean, you can now direct talk, from your iPhone to your lock via Thread if you're not immediately there using HomeKey. So I think there are benefits. I am trying to upgrade mine. Right now, it doesn't look like that firmware is live yet. So they say everything is out, but I have not seen the update show up for my particular smart lock. So if I get it updated, I will let you know on the next episode. This next one we'll just hit really quick. So Aqara, this is not even official news, so we'll be able to talk more about it on the next episode because they are teasing this release for the 19th. But I can tell you what their tagline is on social, which is real-time alerts, sleek design, and no more what's the smell moments. Coming soon to keep your home worry-free, launching November 19th. They have said that it is a smart water controller. So we know what that is. I might be testing one. Who knows? So I can't give more specs and everything away until next week. But if you're in the market for a smart water controller, like maybe it's transitioning right now in your area from fall to winter, and you want to make sure you're turning off like your outdoor faucets and they're in a hard to reach spot, or maybe you just have water sensors in your basement, under sinks, whatever, and you want to worry if there's something is leaking, your water is going to get turned off so you don't flood your house or something. I can imagine this would be pretty useful. So keep an eye out for that. Wes, you want to speculate at all on that before we move on to our big two topics here?
Well, I mean, water control, I feel like, is such an underutilized part of HomeKit, or smart home in general. I keep eyeballing that Moen smart shower system, and then there's the what is it called? It's the controller that you can buy. Anyway, there's smart controls for a shower, and then there's a couple of smart faucets. But it's just few and far between. So it's nice to see a car enter the space. It seems like Aqara wants to just be everything in the smart home, which I'm fine with. Honestly, I like it when I can focus on a single brand and have everything kind of communicate through their different standards that they focus on. But as far as what this is, yeah, I don't know. It just sounds interesting to me. Some sort of water controller. I mean, I personally think that having some sort of smart valve to control the water line in your home and the incoming water into your home is an excellent idea, because you just have a water leak sensor anywhere a water leak could occur, and as soon as it senses one, have the ability to just automatically shut off the water supply. Really good idea. I mean, I feel like that's homeowner 101 at that point, because water damage is not something you ever want to deal with. So yeah, we'll see what they announce. This sounds like it'll be nice.
Well, wrapping up this episode, literally Wes and I are frothing right now about these two announcements or rumors that came out this week. We are I speak for Wes here, but I'm pretty sure we are both incredibly excited for the new details that have come out, first from Ming Chi Kuo and then from Gurman.
Yeah, it seems like what's funny is they're tied together too.
Unrelated sources, but related at the same time.
Right. Because so we'll go in order here. First, it was Apple smart home cameras and stuff, and then it was a Home Hub reveal or leak. So, but it's suggested that Apple's going to reveal this Home Hub first to test the waters on delving more into the hardware side of smart home, and then As long as that goes well, we'll see these smart cameras. So let's start with Ming-Chi Kuo and these smart cameras.
Yeah, so Kuo came out saying that Apple is working on its own first party smart home camera launching in 2026 with production ramping up in late 2025. This completely aligns with, I think this is so funny because I had parts of this even written in here before we knew about some of the other stuff that was going on. But my figure was for the roadmap, we'd have the new versions of Matter coming out this fall. We'd have the new version of Matter being announced in the spring. That will include camera support. That's when I think, as far as my guess is, that's when it's targeting to be added in Matter. So we're going to have camera support added to Matter in the spring of 2025, which would give Apple time to then integrate it summer, production in fall, launching in spring of 2026. So that is my guess for this timeline here. Gore Tech was been tapped for the production, which they've used them before. There were some issues there, but those have been solved, so now everybody's happy and gets along. Targeting tens of millions in the units here, which is pretty crazy for the smart home camera space. That is very high. That would be a dominant share of the market here. But I think with the big thing that I think is going to stand out, two things: privacy and AI. Apple's AI stuff for its cameras, like its package and person detection, are fairly lackluster, partially due to Apple's importance on privacy. They've been working on it, they've been refining it. We've seen no changes on that on our front end, but Apple has not been standing still. It sounds like a lot of that's going to debut in these cameras and give them that first party advantage of building in like Apple Intelligence directly into the cameras themselves. Some features may be available for third parties, but I think a lot of that's going to be built in there, and it's really, really exciting. What's your takeaway of all this?
Do you think these will be 1080p cameras?
Okay, I believe I'm optimistic here. I think Matter is going to include support for 4K cameras. I think Matter's going to do it.
Well,
I think it would be too far behind to do 1080.
So these smart cameras, there's been rumor. This isn't the first time we've heard about it. So I don't know how far back we have to go, but there has been some rumor that Apple's working on smart home devices on the hardware side, that they want to build light bulbs. We've heard that. We've heard about sensors, different things they're testing internally. I bet Apple has a whole smart home ecosystem inside of their little model that they have on a stage, right? I think that these cameras are going to be fairly straightforward. I think you're right in the idea that they might be AI focused or more Apple focused in some way in the ecosystem. But I think Apple just wants to have a little bit more control and be able to say there's absolutely no way that these are like hackable or usable in a botnet or in any case. Like, you can put these in your ecosystem; they're completely trustworthy. And I wonder if maybe somehow these security cameras would double as like smart home cameras or as conference cameras, right? Like, you mount it to your TV, and when you're not using it as a conference camera, it's a security camera, right? And then you get a FaceTime call, and you answer the phone, and it's a FaceTime camera. That's the kind of stuff I'm imagining, because Apple, I think, is going towards more modularity with its products. These would be filled with sensors. They would work as baby monitors, with sound detection for a crying baby, or shatter detection, or anything like that. Like, so I expect these to be all-in-one units. Apple's going to go all out, and they're probably going to be expensive, because I don't see Apple trying to compete in the market with some incredibly basic IP camera. I think it's going to have a lot to do with maybe this home hub we can get into, because I think the two go hand in hand, really.
Absolutely. So we had big Matter news last week or so, 2 weeks ago, whatever it's been, but Matter 1.4 was announced, and we didn't get cameras in that spec, but we did get things like routers. And my first thought was, I really still wish Apple would get into the router space. And now that we're getting Matter having router support, I think it's the perfect time for Apple to do that. Now that we've been saying Apple is focusing on the smart home in 2025 and in 2026 going forward. So the next part of this news is that Apple is, yes, working on a home hub. And this is, again, been rumored. We've talked about it copiously on the show, but now we have more details by way of Gurman. They say that it is working on a new Home OS, something we've heard before. Based on my understanding, it's going to be a forked version of tvOS, which makes sense. Apple is literally turning tvOS into some sort of home hub for years now. We have a redesigned control center for your TVs. We have the new option, like the new way of switching your screensavers, which literally feels like it's more at home on a smaller touchscreen display than on your Apple TV. So like all of those things are pointing to that interface for this device. The next thing is we're going to get tighter integration with Matter. This is going to be huge. I think this is why Apple has been so mum about their Matter support. Like we can't even get them to comment on, oh, do you have Matter 1.2, 1.3? Where are you at on like no one can get any answers. There's nothing official. There's things blowing around, but we have not been able to get anything. I think we're gonna see this hub come out, and it's gonna have like full Matter like 1.3 support built in. Like I think they're going to blow us away with a quick adoption of 1.3, 1.4 maybe. You know, at this point, the changes are small enough. I think they could do it. I think that's what they're going to do. So we're going to have very tight integration with Matter, which is going to unlock a bunch of new accessory types that we'll be able to use in Home for the first time. It's, of course, going to act as a thread border router. And Gurman is also saying that it's going to have a camera built in. So it's going to be acting like a center stage FaceTime camera to keep you on there and to take these FaceTime calls. Makes sense. And then it's going to have a 6.5-inch touchscreen. They say like two iPhones kind of side by side, and it'll have a wall mount option or a stand option. So it's a lot of details here.
Well, so yeah, there's a lot going on. First of all, it's low priced. Apple wants apparently to sell these like they do HomePods. They want people to buy them and have multiple in a single household. They expect users. I think it's going to be a multi-user product, but at the same time, I think they expect that users would maybe have one for each bedroom, and then they would just travel around the house with them during the day, and there would be anchor points in the kitchen, dining room, living room, office, bed, nightstand. And different stands were described, like a speaker stand would be used to play music versus a standard nightstand would just keep it charged but show the display, or a wall mount to show it. So, and I think all these anchor points would have options for power input. And yeah, overall, it sounds like a very, very straightforward product. Like this isn't like some secret like thing Apple's unlocked. It does sound similar to the functionality of something like a Google Home or what is that other product? Amazon, Amazon Echo or whatever their Echo Show or whatever they have. So it's definitely in Apple's wheelhouse. I think we're going to be looking at a $200 price range, and
Do you think it's going to come with a dumb stand in the box and then like an optional upsell for a wall mount or a speaker mount?
The entire ecosystem is going to be accessory based. I think. It's not like you might be able to buy a bundle. I doubt it. This is going to be a tablet in a box that maybe there's a kickstand on it. Honestly, I don't even think it'll have a stand bundled in the box, and it's probably going to be a combination of a lot of things. So simple design, square body, huge bezels. So it's not going to be the prettiest thing to look at probably overall. Probably aesthetically pleasing in a way that it's probably a little bit thinner and lighter because it seems like it might be running like a watch chipset, right? So it's going to be underpowered. It's meant to just be a display technology. It's just
I feel like it's going to run an A series. It's going to be based on what Apple TV's got. I don't think they're going to go with
maybe
a watch chip.
Maybe, but it's just meant to show you information and act as a relay. There's this obviously seems to be a precursor to the $1,000 home hub that would be on a robotic arm that looks at you and follows you as you move around the room. And that would be an AI hub. I don't think that this is that product just yet.
I think it will be.
If it's an A17 Pro, I guess, but they're quickly pricing themselves out. The iPad Mini has an A17 Pro and a Retina display and all this stuff, and it costs $600. So I just don't see Apple going that hard on this, because if they want multiple in the household, they're going to be aiming for a $200 price point, I think, because that's still more expensive than a lot of these home devices that are being sold. but it fits Apple's market share. They can't go too high. If they were selling a speaker stand, that speaker stand can't cost more than a HomePod. It wouldn't make sense. They're in such a tight space here. I wonder what it's going to look like. But overall, the functionality looks like it's going to be similar to what we've seen like with the Google product. You can pick it up and carry it with you. It shows you what music's playing. It can show you a timer. It's going to have that standby mode interface, and you can receive a FaceTime call, and you connect it to whatever mount is available. You're in the kitchen. It's on an arm mount connected to the wall, right? Like, that's the idea. And apparently it's going to have people sensing, so it knows how many people's in the room, who's talking to it, and how close you are. And when you give it a command or look at it, it's going to show you information based on your proximity. If you're further away, it gets bigger. If you get closer, it gets more dense. And Google Home, I believe, already does this. So
Same thing with like the Nest and Ecobee thermostats.
yeah, so it's interesting to see that they're entering this space and kind of combining a bunch of technologies, but I don't see this as a $600 plus tablet device, because then they would just sell you an iPad that has an always on display. So this has to be down market. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, I don't think.
So counterpoint. I think you're right on the price point. I think the device itself is going to be like about $200 for the tablet itself. It's going to have that FaceTime camera. To reiterate a little bit what you said with what we've talked about before, was that there does seem to be not only will it be able to use that camera to like recognize, there'll be like hand gestures for you to be able to dismiss things, and it's going to know who you are via AI and your photos and things like that. So it'll be able to tell different people apart and match your gestures with what you're doing. All of that is good. But this is where I think we disagree. We've heard, the rumor said that Apple was the first smart home device that they made was going to be the moving robot one. And you're saying no. This is why I think that's right. Because I think they're going to sell the tablet, right? $200 smart home display with a basic stand. Or you get one that's got the speaker quality of a full-size HomePod, so you're replacing a full-size HomePod. And then Apple already has the tech. You don't need an A17 Pro. You need an A-series chip at all. Because this right here, magnetic mount on the top, you slap your device, it automatically uses the built-in camera to find people and follow you around the room. We'd even heard that this tablet would mount on top of something that would look like an old Mac G4, right? With the rounded base on the bottom and then the metal arm coming up. What does that look like?
Well,
Maybe something like this.
No, I just mean
It would be able to rotate around and tilt up and down. It would be able to follow you. They've already got the tracking and everything built into every iPhone that runs iOS 17.
Yeah, I feel like
That's not going to cost much.
No, that's not the issue. And I believe the robotic arm system relying on AI is the issue, and that's where it's going to. There's portions.
Well,
of
we
this
know it's going to support
that
Apple
suggest,
Intelligence.
Well,
it has to.
Well, that's the thing. There's portions of this report that suggest that this could be a quote-unquote AI hub and act as a relay to the rest of the home. So if you're speaking to a HomePod, which does not have Apple Intelligence, it would be able to bounce that signal through one of these home hubs and have it perform the task for it. And that's interesting, because then Apple would be able to say, you want the smarter Siri? You buy this device. I think that would be a good selling point, but then again, Apple's boxing themselves into a corner. It's a RAM and chipset limitation, and those things are not inexpensive. So I just wonder how they're going to play this. Is it going to be a different kind of relay? We've discussed this before. Private cloud compute. Could it just be a internet relay that has a very specific chipset that allows it to do this in a more inexpensive way? Because no, I agree. I don't think it needs AI to control the robotic arm. That would be silly. I think it needs the AI capabilities, the Apple Intelligence capabilities to control Apple Intelligence. It's what we're seeing with the, iPhone 15 updates with the iPad mini, right? The iPad mini got this chipset just so it could get Apple Intelligence. It's the bare minimum qualifier. Unless they just have millions of these little chips laying around, I'm not sure what their goal is as far as Apple Intelligence goes.
it's going to be full Apple. I see no other way around it. Apple's going to be putting Apple Intelligence in everything that they can. They want to
Sure.
get it out there as much as possible because they want to start monetizing it. So there is no way I see this device launching because the amount of people
Yeah.
that, oh man, I'm someone who has a big smart home that wants a smart home controller, but I also don't want to pay for Apple Intelligence. I think that market is going
I
to be
I
too
know
small
I
for that
agree.
version.
I agree with that. Like there's honestly almost no way Apple could launch this Home Hub without supporting Apple Intelligence. My issue is how are they going to do it? Is it because I wonder if they don't announce a new proprietary chipset of some kind that's built for AI that is cheap, inexpensive
I mean, they're going to
to
put that chip in the iPhone SE4 in March, and that's going to be a sub
sure
$400 phone.
maybe
And I'm not saying
the
this isn't going to be
A17.
nearly as verbose.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. A17 Pro is on the same architecture as the M2, correct? So if that's true, then there's no reason why Apple wouldn't be making billions of these right now in a fab because that process has a high yield rate and it's more inexpensive as time goes on. If it was built on the same process as M3, they'd be trying to run away from it. So I'm assuming that's correct. And maybe we're just underestimating the fact that Apple was already preparing A17 Pro to just be a long-term entry-level chip that costs them 50 cents to make and they can just shove it into everything, which if that's the case,
But it could be
great.
that could be the A18 chip too. I mean,
Maybe.
because that was their cheaper version of that. I mean,
Maybe.
it's not a bin down version. It does seem like it's a specifically designed chip. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what they're going with.
And that could be maybe why it wasn't available for the iPad mini as well, right? We'll see. The Apple's strategy here is getting clearer as time goes on. We knew almost nothing a while ago except that Apple's making a tablet-like smart home hub, and now it's here's all the use cases and the accessories, and so hopefully, I can't wait to have a name for this thing because I don't know what to call it. Home hub is kind of silly, but I am excited for Apple's pitch because if Apple can do one thing, they can pitch a product and they can convince you to buy it. So I'm interested in seeing how they sell this device because to be honest, even for me, it's like I already have an iPad and I can just buy magnetic mounts for around the home. And I understand it's different because it's not an always on display and my battery will eventually explode if I leave it powered on all the time. So there's obviously give and take here and there's a reason why this product should exist, but I think they really need to sell us on it.
I think Apple is going to go with more of like a $250 or $300 price point because already Google is more expensive. Like the Google Home Hub Max is like $230, and Apple is not going to undercut the competition, and it won't have the speaker built in. So, but that speaker's not amazing anyway. I've got one. The speaker's not great. So I think they're going to use it. They'll price it a little bit above that to stay somewhat competitive, maybe 250, and then they're going to count on those accessories deriving additional sales. So they might not make as much money with that main unit, but when they have the robotic arm speaker attachment or wall mounts options, any of those things, I think that's where they're going to make up additional money. Plus, again, long-term revenue driven through iCloud subscriptions and HomeKit Insider. Your note edit popped up as I'm talking, and I read HomeKit Insider. Apple Intelligence. So I think iCloud Plus and Apple Intelligence features are going to be subscription revenues going forward. So Apple's going to come out a little bit competitive here, base set of features, all that stuff built in,
Well,
and then they're going to have a lot of reoccurring revenue with those add-ons and subscriptions.
it's interesting because this lines up with other things that have come out. I believe there was an SEC filing recently telling investors to, I think, I didn't get to read it. It just passed me by very quickly, suggesting that telling investors, hey, the iPhone was kind of an anomaly, right? And expecting us to redo the iPhone is just unrealistic. And that seems like a very honest thing for Apple to say, but it's true. Like, come on, never going to do another iPhone. And going forward, they expect to release more products that will sell in higher volume in volume, but they're never going to be the iPhone success. So I think these products fall into that strategy. I think, so it all seems to be lining up. Like you said, Matter supported cameras, Apple coming up with a home hub that they want to sell 2 or 3 to each household. Then smart cameras, you're going to buy a couple of those, and we're, maybe even that light bulb that people keep rumoring is going to come, and then we'll have a whole Apple home ecosystem. But
I think the biggest thing that's like been a theme for years now that we saw with Nanoleaf years ago, that has been continuously to grow. What we're going to see with the smart home is going to be AI, because we got to the point where like you had to manually turn off bulbs, like with a button or whatever, and it was like wireless, cool. The next step up after that, you're getting to, oh, we can schedule them. Now we have basic motion sensing, and now we're getting to like triggers and a little bit more of that automation. And the next step of that is going to be doing things proactively. And companies are already doing that. Nanoleaf is doing that with a lot of their stuff. And that's where I think Apple is going to start. That's where Apple sees that value. They see so much potential here in the smart home. We have heard that through rumors, how much Apple believes in the smart home. And I think that AI step is going to be that next case scenario. Right. And everything's going to start to come together very nicely. And it's going to start next year with that home hub. Then they're gonna do something just for me and release their own routers, and then we're gonna get their own cameras, and AI stuff is gonna continue to grow at a crazy pace.
I really hope that we see this device in March. I
hope so. I can't wait no longer.
Yeah, because it seems like March is the date now, and unless something happens, that's where it's coming. It's got to be in production, so supply chain stuff's gonna start popping up. We might even see a picture of it at some point, but it's a square display. I'm not sure what there is to see, but I'm very interested in this. I'm very interested in an Apple TV update. Hopefully, maybe they'll come together in the spring. Maybe Apple will have a little smart home event or something.
Gurman called that imminent like half a year ago.
Well, I think this report, maybe I'm remembering incorrectly. I think this report specifically called out March of 25, but maybe that was something else. But anyway, I'm very excited for this product, and I will definitely be buying 2 at least. So Apple, you can put me down for 2 out of 2 billion that you're going to sell these.
Okay, we spent a lot of time on that. This has been a great episode, chock full of news. If everyone can do us a favor, please leave a podcast review for us on the podcast player of choice. Apple, YouTube, Spotify, whatever you're going with these days. Maybe try it out Q. I don't know if that does the podcast reviews, but if you can, give us one. The best one you can. It would be fantastic. If you watch the video version of this, you can go to youtube.com/HomeKit Insider. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys in the next episode.